All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to the Igniting the Fire podcast. My name is Noah Olson, one of the preachers here at the Piedmont Church of Christ, and with me today is no stranger, as our other preacher, Ethan Rogers. So thankful for him today, joining us for, is it our fourth? I think it's our fourth season, um, if we're counting that. But anyway, we're so thankful that you've joined us today. Ethan, I guess I could have you introduce yourself. I mean, just kind of
So I
tell
was, I was,
everyone who you
yeah, I
are.
was thinking about it. I was thinking about it earlier, and I think at this point it's time to start giving like random fun facts.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Yeah, do that. Do that.
So obviously, I'm in a different room than I normally am. Usually, I'm in the library there at the church building. Due to some time problems, namely me being like an hour and a half late, I've decided to just go from home. Uh, so, uh, so fun fact of the day for myself. Uh, I'm about 1 month away from having lived here at Granity's house for 4 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and it has flown by and dragged out. And, it's all the days sometimes are long and the years are short. But yeah, so 4 years being here. And
That's good.
it's crazy.
Yeah, Ethan, have you told people what?
No, I don't think I've ever said it over this.
Okay.
But yeah, Granddaddy's got Lewy body dementia and requires him to have somebody with him 24/7. So we've got sitters here while I'm at work, and then I'm here the rest of the time. And so, so this is home.
Yeah, absolutely. Fulfilling 1 Timothy 5. That's great. Doing a great thing there. Very helpful. I know he appreciates that, whether sometimes he recognizes it or not. But also, it's a great
He likes.
encouragement.
He's a big fan of having a live-in chef.
There you go.
So
There you go. Absolutely, absolutely. But no, Ethan preaches second Sunday of the month, and every sermon I'm ready. I'm always encouraged and learn something, and teaches Bible class every Sunday on Isaiah. And so I'd encourage you to either tune in or come join us. I mean, just come see us, 105 Memorial Drive. We'd love to be able to see you, and you can come and learn more about the Church of Christ if you don't know about us, or we can help you in any question you might have. So, Ethan, let's just dive right in. We've been looking at mental health. Let's kind of say this: neither of us are licensed therapists or counselors or really have any background in this in a professional or educational setting too much. But Proverbs 12 is where we'll be at today. So if you want to open your Bibles, Ethan, do you want to just read the passage, verses 25 through 28, kind of look at this and make some application as we go through. But Proverbs 12, 25 through 28.
All right, so Solomon says, "Heaviness in the heart of man maketh it stoop, but a good word maketh it glad. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them. The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious. In the way of righteousness is life, and in the pathway thereof there is no death."
Yeah, absolutely. So that verse 25, we mentioned it last episode in anxiety, but there's also that idea there of weighing him down. That anxiety leads to a stooping, and we'll kind of get into that in a moment. But again, we've noted that Proverbs 23:7, for as a man thinks in his head, so is he. Right. So how we how our minds work, that's what's going to come out. Right. And so today we're going to focus on another mental, maybe I don't want to say disorder, but another maybe ailment, and that's depression. Um,
And I want to caveat that. So the Proverbs 23:7, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. That in all of these cases, and I meant to look at the list, your schedule of the other topics, but you are not whatever mental disorder that you have.
That's right.
And it's not exactly it's not the point that we're trying to draw there, from that, but there's always a step you can take. And
right.
if there's some, I guess the politically correct term is neurodivergence. If there is some neurodivergence there, there's always steps you can take to be the best you.
That's right. Absolutely. I think that, the point from Proverbs 23:7 is if we can, correct our thinking, we can be who we want to be, right? Even in the secular world, we're told that, this is who we are. We can't change it, or, you were born this way. But the Bible teaches that we can overcome, any obstacle that we put our mind to, and things like that. But depression, there's some statistics I looked up. I thought this was interesting that depression, it might be probably the second most common mental problem. I think anxiety had a lot more. According to the World Health Organization, around 280 million people suffer with depression. A lot of people do. And we're not here to offer like clinical advice. We're here to look at scripture and to see how we can overcome feelings of distress and heartache and things like that. But this affects a lot of people. And I would venture to say that each one of us has either struggled, maybe not clinically or chronically, but maybe we've had bouts of times where we're more down than other times.
Yeah, and kind of to tag onto that, Titus chapter 2 is always where my mind goes, because as preachers, we're called to talk about all sorts of topics. Mm-hmm. And they're topics that we are familiar with because we've lived them. You and I can talk about being an obedient child. We can talk about how to respect your parents, and but we're also called to talk about like parenting, and we're also called to talk about marriage, and and in this case, there's the Bible talks about depression, and the Bible talks about mental disorders and things like that, and so Titus chapter 2, Paul breaks down the instructions for Titus. There, verse 6-8, young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded, in all things showing thyself a pattern. So there are things where we have experience and we can be an example, but you go back to verses 1-5, speak thou the things which become sound doctrine. And then he tells him, here's what you teach the older men, having never been an older man. Here's what you teach the older women, having never been an older woman, and the younger men, or the younger women, having never been a younger woman. And so so in all of our endeavors, especially in things we have no experience in, just to speak sound doctrine.
Absolutely. That's a good point. I love that thought. And I've heard that said before. Just, sometimes us as younger preachers can feel like, well, I'm not adequate to speak about this because I'm not old, or I'm not, in this situation. But as long as it's from scripture, we have every right, and not just have a right, but an obligation, I think.
Right.
Paul said, what did he say? I'm free from the blood of all men. I've spoken to you the whole counsel of God. So, absolutely. So when we think about this, and you might be listening here today, and maybe you struggle with this, and maybe some of the things that will help, we think about depression, you can't just look at someone and say, okay, he has depression, or she has depression, or she struggles in this way. People hide it, right? I mean, you think about those who are rich and those who are famous, like my mind goes to Robin Williams, right? You would never maybe think that he had that. And yet this is a struggle that's internal. It's isolated. It's you can hide it very well. And so hopefully we'll be able to help you at least look at some biblical principles to see what we can do to overcome some of those feelings. I'm reminded of many people in Scripture who struggled with at least maybe not, clinically, but people who struggled. Psalm 42. Let me just read this. Psalm 42, and this was one of the passages I thought about just going over, but and it'd be a great two. But Psalm 42, verse 5, the psalmist says, "Why are you cast down, O my soul? Why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my salvation." So David struggled with that. I think it's David who's the psalmist there. Nope, it's not. It's just the psalmist. So this psalmist struggled with it. I'm sure David did at times. Having this throughout the Psalms. Elijah, absolutely. I think there's an episode, the first season, I think it is, on Elijah and depression. Jeremiah, Paul, Job, Judas, and Jesus. I don't want to say Jesus was depressed, but Matthew 26, verse 38, that word exceeding sorrowful comes from a word that means, Strong says, grieved all around. even Jesus had a time in which he was distressed. And so, Ethan, I think we can agree with this, is that the idea that being distressed is not a sin. Having feelings of depression is not sin. Jesus even had that. And so I think that's a fundamental thought to think about.
And the nice thing, in all of the examples that you've listed, I think if you said Judas, so save for Judas, all of these people handled it properly.
Yeah,
they were in this position, and one of the things that's in common, and you can, in kind of reading all these verses and reading through these notes, one of the things that they all had in common, and I think one thing that takes depression past sadness, because there's sadness, and then there's even where you kind of look at your life and there's pessimism, and that's not even depression. I think one of the common ideas you get there in Matthew 26:38, my soul is exceeding sorrowful even unto death. And it's when you cross that line into, okay, maybe the answer to my sadness, the answer to my depression is death. Because like I said, because Elijah, hey, it's time, take me, just kill me. Jeremiah says it, Jeremiah 20. Paul says it, they despaired even of life. Job says it, cursed the day I was born.
Right.
And then Judas obviously, felt that way, and then actually took that, the tragic step of ending his life. And so one of the commonalities there in all those examples is that despair to the point of, I don't think I can go on any further.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's so much statistics on those who have taken that step, and we want to help those who are listening to to think of for those who might be even struggling to that point of thoughts there, to reconsider that and to think about how beautiful life is, and so yeah, absolutely. Let's go to this first thought about defining. Let's just define depression, just real quick. I mean, Proverbs 12 verse 25. That word there, I'm jumping all over the place on my notes here, but this word maketh it stoop. In the Hebrew, just means to I think one version says depression. You translates it depression, but it just means to stoop. And I get this idea maybe of a person who's just walking around, just kind of with a bent back, and he's just kind of droopy, And again, we all get that way. But depression, like you said, isn't being sad. It's not just being, it's not introverted. Oh, he's quiet, so he must be depressed. Well, no, this is a consistent, persistent feeling. One said that depression is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness, a loss of interest in things and activities you once enjoyed. So it's a persistent feeling of sadness that can cause a lot of problems.
And sadness even may not be the best word, because maybe just say it's an overwhelming amount of negative emotion, because
that's good.
Because one of the symptoms that's listed here is angry outbursts and that irritability, and my mind goes to Saul, or King Saul, when Jeremiah comes in, or Jonathan rather, comes in and is talking to him about David, and Saul says, "You know what?" and he picks up a javelin and throws it at him, and it's like, we don't think about Saul as being a sad man, but I think some of these other ideas here, this kind of the symptoms of depression, present themselves.
Yeah.
So I mean, just this overwhelming emotion of, but most of the time as sadness, despair.
Absolutely. Going through those, let's just go through those very briefly. I didn't put verses to all of these, but I was like, man, you can find some of these in scripture. Feelings of sadness. I mean, just read Lamentations, right? Just look at Jeremiah. Like you said, yeah, Ethan, absolutely. I think I put 1 Kings. It's really 1 Samuel there, but angry outbursts, loss of interest. Elijah, what does he do? He isolates himself, stops preaching. This, sleep disturbances. Jeremiah 45, I think Jeremiah says, I can't sleep. Tiredness, reduced appetite. Elijah doesn't eat, right? At least the implication there is, because God feeds him. anxiety, slowed thinking, speaking or body movements, feelings of worthlessness. And when I preach on First Kings, I note there that Elijah himself says in verse number 4, I am no better than my fathers. I'm a nobody. And Ethan, let's stay on that for a moment, because I think one of the biggest problems with emotional disturbance is I'm nothing. I'm worthless. Who am I? I mean, I'm not like that person, or I can't be like him, can't be like her. I'm a nobody, right? Um, I don't know. Would you agree with that? Lack of
Yeah,
self-love?
and it reminds me. So one of the things we should have mentioned probably right at the very start. There is a big difference in I don't know the best way. I'm sure that there's a clinical description of this somewhere, but kind of um, like a cognitive depression versus a chemical depression,
Right.
because there is absolutely a chemical element to it.
Right. Right.
And so what we're speaking about here is the cognitive, because it's where it's the cognitive depression is kind of, okay, you've allowed yourself to get into this state, and here are steps you can take to cognitively get yourself back out. And if there's a clinical or a chemical depression, it might help.
Right.
And so when you start thinking about like a lack of self-esteem, or lack of, you don't value lack of self-worth,
Right.
I think the cognitive depression side of it is a lot of trying to trust yourself to be able to make yourself happy, or in the idea of self-worth, trying to find that self-worth in yourself. And and we know from everywhere else in the Bible, you're not going to find it there. You can't make yourself happy. You can't find the worth in this world by yourself, when we're supposed to find our happiness in God. We're supposed to find our joy and our peace, and then eventually our self-worth in God.
Absolutely. I read somewhere about Madeline. What was her O'Hare? She went 1995. She either went missing or dead, and they looked at her journal, and in her journal all throughout was she wrote, someone somewhere please love me. And I think that plea is so it's numerous, especially among younger people. I think they just want somebody to love them, and if they would just observe the beauty of and look at Jesus and see how much love he has for them, would they find it? Because again, like you said, absolutely. What does Jeremiah say? The way of man is not in himself. And so, find the only way that I'm going to be able to feel better about myself is looking and accepting the love of God through Jesus and seeing what He has done for me. But yeah, so feelings of worthlessness, trouble thinking. Again, then you have this, as we mentioned, suicidal thoughts. There, many people in Scripture have had that. Just kill me. Obviously, in that list we gave, only Judas performed that. To his detriment, but there are thoughts there, and then there's also physical problems that result from that, and so depression is a very debilitating. It can be very debilitating.
Yeah, and there are other sicknesses like depression, Epstein-Barr syndrome for one, or you think some more on the physical side, where depression is kind of a mental, you're kind of always under this mental pain and mental stress. You think about like fibromyalgia, or however you pronounce it, where it's a physical instead of a mental, where you are physically under this pain.
Right.
And those two tie in, together, where, you mentioned it's a very physical thing, can be debilitating, and vice versa, where if you are constantly under physical pain, that's going to lead to some mental stress as well, to some mental pain.
Absolutely.
And so it's the ability to, maybe you can't beat it. Maybe you can't ever rid yourself of it, but to be the absolute best person you can be despite the circumstances.
Absolutely. That's good. I've heard it said, you can't necessarily, cure anxiety. It always pops its head around the corner, but you can manage it. And so, yeah, absolutely. And the Bible, I've always said this, too, that the Bible's the first, mental health textbook, right? All these secular ideologies and are leading people down a worse mental path. But you really want to be better mentally, then just look at Scripture. Just look and see what God has to say about that. And he has a lot to say if we'll just look at it. Let me read Proverbs 15 real quick. Proverbs 15, verse 13, just noticing this, that the Bible talks a lot about this and recognizes that. I think that's the first step. And we'll kind of mention that later. Is the first step to overcoming this or helping this is recognizing that maybe you do have some of these thoughts. And the Bible recognizes this. Proverbs 15, 13, a glad heart makes a cheerful face, but by sorrow of heart the spirit is crushed. And so the Bible recognizes that people struggle with this. And divinely, God knew that, and he wants to help people with that. Ethan, do you have any more? I want to look at the causes of depression. Do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Let's go to some of these causes here. What might be the cause of my distress and my feelings of depression? I like what Wendell Winkler said. He said, most discouragements will be found in an overactive mind and an underactive body. I thought that was an interesting thought. Well, the Proverbs writer says, heaviness in the heart of a man makes it stoop. Heaviness, anxiety. The word there, I'm not going to pronounce it, means care or sorrow. And there's many things that might be the cause of that. And so in order for me to overcome that, I need to see what is the foundation. Okay, why do I feel this way? Why do I struggle this way? Ethan, what are some just common causes of people struggling with this today?
So I wrote out beside that with the heaviness. So Hebrews 12, verse 1. Let's see. Let me get over there. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. And so there's this, if your heart is heavy, maybe it's because you're putting too much on your heart, and you need to lay aside some of those weights. I know that I get overwhelmed fairly easily sometimes, or I can let myself get overwhelmed, like at work. If I let things start to pile up, then it piles up, and then suddenly I'm looking at 15 deadlines in one day, and granted that activates the monkeys in my brain to work faster, and things normally get done, but I mean it really just ruins my day because I've got to take a step back and I got to stop and I got to just recenter myself.
That's good.
So then my brain goes, okay, Hebrews 12:1, lay aside the weight. Well, we can't just lay aside things that matter, like the important things. And a lot of the things in our life is important. Things that, you're juggling the things that matter, the family and work and, living a Christian life. And, there's all these responsibilities.
Right.
And so then we go 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 7. And you say, okay, well, where can I safely put these important things that matter that I can't let fall to the ground? And 1 Peter 5 verse 7, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. And so, again, we go back to this talking about self-worth and talking about joy and happiness and peace. And where do we find those things? We find those things when we put our cares in the right spot. So as far as causes of depression, I think we have a really bad habit, in America, the United States, known for its individualism, known for its independence, known for its, we can just buckle down and get things done. And sometimes we take that way too seriously.
That's a good thought. Absolutely. I didn't even think about that. That's wonderful. Not relying on God enough. Absolutely. I like what one said. At the bottom of all psychological problems are spiritual problems. Not always, are there, people who are sad. There are spiritual problems, but a lot of it might be, and we might not recognize it. I thought about just a few thoughts here. What about maybe I'm feeling distressed and depressed because I have sin. Maybe I have like a sin that I need to, that I haven't taken care of. That's if you look at Psalm 32, I always like this picture of like a hand pressing down upon David. That's kind of the picture here. Verse 3, for when I kept silent, when I didn't confess my sin, but simply, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was dried up as by the heat of summer. And so maybe it's an unrepented sin that I have that I need to confess to God. That can cause distress. Did for David. I mean, and there was, and how many people today are distraught by their sin. Sin always enslaves a person. Maybe it's not sin. Maybe it's bringing something in the future into the present. We talked about anxiety last week and last episode, and how worrying about the future really doesn't do anything for your present. Really hurts your present. But Matthew 6, verse 34, Jesus says, let tomorrow worry about itself. And so maybe that's a cause for my distress. Maybe it's sickness. Maybe it's I've gotten a diagnosis that I'm not really happy with. Maybe it's a chronic illness that now I have to live with throughout the rest of my life. And why can't I be like him and not struggle with that? Or why that might be the reason. In fact, Philippians 2, verse 25 through 27, Paul observed that I thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother and fellow worker and fellow soldier, and your messenger and minister to my need, for he has been longing for you all and has been distressed because you heard that he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, near to death, but God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. And he's thinking about what could have happened if he would have remained sick, and I would have been sorrowful because of that. So maybe it's a sickness. Maybe it's job problems. Maybe it's church problems. So many things that we could list here. But one of the ways in which we can overcome this is to determine the cause. What is at the root of the problem?
And you mentioned that I had said something that you didn't think of. All of your points feed into that, though.
Right.
Like it's if it's unforgiven sins, well, there's only one solution to that. If it's bringing the future into the present, that in Matthew 6 is all about hey, let God take care of that, and you take care of this. Right. Sickness, and then the job problems, the church problems, all of that falls into categories of, if you follow after the spiritual, Matthew 6:33, then the physical will follow and the mental will follow. And so, it's not that you didn't think of it, it's that you worded it different. So it's all the same idea.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's good. So, people struggle different ways, and that's, one of the things that I would suggest just personally is, figure out, what it is you're struggling with. And then really therapy might help with that. Counseling and then, that obviously you need to be careful. And I've said this on this podcast before, but search out, Christian counselors. There are few, but, and talk to someone. God's the originator of talk therapy. We pray to him, as Christians, and as Ethan mentioned, 1 Peter 5:7, we're casting all our cares upon him. We give that to God, and talking about it really helps. That's one of the ways that we'll be able to overcome it.
Yeah, one of the things, this is something that I had some experience with just in conversations, and one of the things in the past couple of years that's really come to light that I experienced was there's a lot of shame around what we think. There's a lot of shame around what we feel and what we do, and there's maybe some shame in what we talk about and what we say, and or stigma even might be a better word for it, where this, again, we go back to the culture that we live in, and we say, well, we're a very independent culture, and when you think of men, and men don't cry, and you're supposed to be able to fix your problems on your own. And that just perpetuates the problem, because if you never talk about it, you can't really confront it. Like it's really hard to, and so then you find some beauty then in prayer, because maybe you can't overcome the stigma. Maybe you're so caught up in, I can't let another human being know that I feel this way. Pray about it then. I mean, just get it from your brain to your mouth to somebody. If it's a human, if it's God, it's got to come out somehow.
That's
or
right.
else it'll eat you.
Yeah. No, I'll say this about my personal, for many years as a teenager, I held a lot of things in, and that hurt me, personally. And it's only after, okay, I can talk about this. And thankfully so much, when you think about, I was reading in a book somewhere where, when somebody is going through a surgery, we say, I'll pray for you. When somebody, has gotten in a car wreck, oh man, we're there first thing. But when somebody says, I'm struggling with some mental disorder, we say, oh, whoa, 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 and so we as people who are on the other end need to be willing and able to say, can I just listen to you, or can I just be there for you? I won't say a word. I'll just listen, and that can help as well. Absolutely.
And we
And
start to think about, you can kind of get into the different roles in the church where they're naturally going to be people that are good at that.
Yeah.
And then there are naturally going to be people that are not good at that. And I tend towards the second category, because if somebody, if I'm sitting across from somebody and they start crying, my heart tightens up, I can feel it in my chest, and I'm like, okay, so now I'm in panic mode because you're freaking out and I'm freaking out and you're crying and I'm, but there is just a lot of, again, maybe it's not you're asking for a solution, but there's just so much strength in getting it out that you don't have to sit there and do anything. Sometimes it's enough to just sit there.
Absolutely. I don't know if you think this way, but James 5:16. I think there's a principle there. Confess your faults one to another. Now, I don't really think that that's a go forward a verse. I think sometimes we misuse that because it's a confessing one to another back and forth there. But confess your faults one to another and pray for one another, you may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. I think there's an application there. The importance of letting it out. The importance of just being able to kind of say, okay, because when I let it out, maybe someone else will let it out, and it's like, man, we kind of have some similarities there, and I can kind of feel that sympathy.
Well, and then going back to that list of people that in the Bible that you could kind of see symptoms of depression, Elijah and David and Paul and Jeremiah and Jesus. It's like, okay, if you feel some sort of depression, you're in good company. And that's not you're let's see, what is I guess it's in 1 Corinthians. Well, I guess Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. And there is no temptation taking you such as is common to man. Each experience in this life is different. You and I are not going to live identical lives, but we're going to see the same things, and we're going to have similar feelings. We're going to have similar problems. And so, and if not you, somebody.
That's right. I always found it comforting. I wonder, in Revelation 1, verse number 9, John is writing to Christians who are being persecuted, obviously. And he says, I, John, your brother and your partner in the tribulation and the kingdom and patience, endurance that are in Jesus. I am going through the same things you're going through. Now, how comforting would that have been to these Christians? This is Apostle John, and he's struggling the way, absolutely, because these are just men, Peter, James, Paul, they're just men. And yes, they had that, that inspiration there, but they're struggling the way that I am. And I can use that as, okay, if they can overcome it and they can have a good outlook on this, then I can as well. But how am I ever going to get over that if I don't talk about it and I don't communicate that?
Right.
Good point. Absolutely. So that's, recognizing and observing what I have, or maybe what I'm struggling with, always helps. And that's the beauty of the church. Some, don't recognize the involvement there, that this as a congregate, we're family, and we're there for comfort. I'm writing an article, I think I'm done with it, but on one of the problems that why we might not getting much out of worship. And one of the thoughts, one of the points there is because I might not be attending as regularly as I should. And, worship is ultimately for God, but God knew that I needed it weekly, right? God knew that I needed that assembly there, so we can share with one another. It's not just from opening prayer to closing prayer. It's also what happens outside of that as well, right? Being able to communicate and talk about our daily lives.
Yeah, I mean
Absolutely.
they're in Hebrews 10:25. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another.
That's
And
right.
so, and so much more as you see the day approaching. And that's not just, hey, make sure you're doing good. You're make sure that you're righteous, but it's also, hey, let's I want to check in on you and how are you doing and everything else as well. How is work? How's the family? How's your health? And all of those things, and then exhorting each other in those aspects too.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. Good thoughts there. All right, let's go to some other, I guess, cures. I guess again, we can't really cure necessarily. We're not going to be free from cares until we get to heaven, and we look forward to that. But how do we kind of be better on earth? How can we overcome some of these obstacles? God obviously doesn't want us to be sad. He doesn't want us to be distressed. He wants us to get through life feeling good, feeling great. And because if we don't take care of this, it's not that we're just going to live sad lives, but we're also it's going to be a hindrance to His kingdom work as well. And so that's very important. But let's go to Proverbs 12, verse 25. Heaviness in the heart of a man makes it stoop, but a good word makes it glad. Number one, I just drew this application, and Ethan, just give your thoughts on this as well. But the power of words, and we've again kind of talked about this, but a good word makes it glad. Thinking about how powerful words are is very important. Words I hear, words I say to myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just yeah. I mean, we've kind of been hitting on it the past little bit, talking about us attending church and what do we do surrounding the assembly as well as in the assembly. There's also the good word is also an idea. It makes it glad, and so there's both of those. Just well, they say garbage in, garbage out.
That's right.
And so it's being very particular about what we hear and what we allow ourselves to hear. In that, I know that we're about to get there in verse 26, but in our associations and making sure that if we're around people that make us feel that way, make us feel bad, make us feel some depression, get away from those people. Like that's and it seems so simple, but I know in practice it's so hard. If 90% of the time they're great, and 90% of the time they're our best friends and make us feel great, and then 10% of the time they make us feel awful. Do we give up the 90% of good times for the 10% of the bad? And
might demand it.
Right, and the answer is yeah. I mean, for your mental health.
That's right. And spiritual well-being too. Absolutely. I mean, so the words that maybe I say to myself, I need to start talking to myself in a positive way. One of the things I've been mindful of recently is, man, I will sit on my phone and I will scroll social media constantly. And I was like, no, I can't. No, you got to do something. Do something else, man. Read a book. Like, just go do something else that's more productive. Because, I've recognized that. I'm trying to be better about that because I will. I will sit at home and just, it's crazy. But even those who might not do that, maybe it's TV. Sitting on there watching news all day long can that could be depressing sometimes. Maybe it's just things that I hear on the radio, TV. Is it words of violence or sensuality or hatred, or is it rather words of encouragement? And as you stated, Ethan, earlier, words from the Bible. Can you go? I mean, it's a simple question, but can you go wrong with choosing to read the Bible over anything else?
Even the most depressing passages in the Bible are surrounded with so much good. We've talked about that in our Isaiah Bible class. Just the
Right.
that light of good shining through the destruction and through evil. That there's always that hope. But the end of Judges. The end of Judges is awful. It is a terrible time in history. It's a terrible time in the Bible where, I mean, they are just murdering people and they're kidnapping women, and like it is an awful thing. But even in reading that, like you read before that and you get the stories of the other judges. You read after that, you get Samuel. And it's like, okay, even this time of awfulness was surrounded by good.
That's
And,
important.
and so then you can take that and you actually can apply that to today. Maybe your depression is seasonal. There's like, SAD, seasonally affected depression. Maybe it is enough that you could look at your life and say, I might be in an awful spot right now. I might be at the end of Judges in my life. But surrounding it, I know that there have been good times before, and I can trust that there will be good times later.
That's right. And asking, how can I change it? What can I do to change things? I think that's also important principle too, is we can pray, but we also have to make the necessary changes. I like what you made about Judges, because if you just flip one page, Judges 21:25, isn't it that verse that says every man did right that which was right in his eyes, I think. You just turn one page and then you're at Ruth, and then you have redemption, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a story of redemption. So I love that. That's a great thought. That's good. So yeah, be careful with your words. Let's go to the second one. Be careful with whom you associate. The righteous, verse 26, is more efficient, or rather excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduces them. The importance of knowing, who you surround yourselves with. Is it people who are going to help you get to heaven, or is it people who are just, dragging you down? The importance of making sure that we, because like you use that, that percentage there, that 10% can cause even problems, and the importance there.
Well, but then on the other hand, and now that I really think about it, when we think about the way that the church is designed and the requirements given to the church, Wednesday night in Bible class, we talked about what does God actually require of the church, time-wise, and of the actual organized church. He demands one worship service.
Right.
He demands us to come together one time a week on the first day of the week. And then we've gone in and thankfully, we've taken 1 hour and made 4 hours, where we get 3 hours on Sunday, an hour on Wednesday night. And we should make efforts to be with each other outside of that. I know you and I have talked about, just game nights and even things that are not necessarily Bible focused, but
right.
where we're in a safe space of sorts, where we're surrounded by Christians.
For sure.
But we're still also called to be lights in an evil world. And our associations, if we never associate with non-Christians, if we never associate with evil, we can't ever teach evil.
That's right.
And so there's just this. So when you think about what does God actually require of the church, you think, okay, here is this blip on Sunday, and then we are, our lives require us to be in the world 6 days of the week. Whether that be work, whether that be school, whether that be just whatever else. And so, so we are going to be surrounded by evil people from time to time. And that makes it all the more important then that we are diving in head first when we have those chances with other Christians. When we have those chances, if your congregation only met for 1 hour a week, that you are there and you are not just there physically, but you are engaged and you are intentionally going and seeking out that encouragement.
That's right. Absolutely. And that's why God made the church, for that encouragement. Christianity is not an individual religion that's just me, myself, and God. It's more than that. And absolutely. But yeah, I want to be around people, there's differences, right, from acquaintances and friends, personalities sometimes just don't click. And that's okay. Mary and Martha were two different people. And that's okay. But recognizing, who's encouraging, and choosing friends that will encourage you, that will care about you, that will listen to you, and that want a relationship. Isolation is, I think, the biggest problem in mental health.
For sure.
And so wanting to make sure that we surround ourselves with God's people, but also being that lights, as you said. And I think, what did Paul say in 1 Corinthians 5? Don't associate with erring brethren, but it's not that you just, totally disassociate with all sin, because you have to go out and be a light to the world, to those who are in the world, right?
Right.
And so you need to need to be that way. All right, let's go to number 3. Verse 27 says, "A slothful man roasts not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious." This is kind of humorous to me. A man goes out and kills something, and yet he doesn't use anything with it. It's like you wasted all your time going to hunt, and then you don't use. I mean, you might as well just not have gone. And so depression can lead to laziness, if not careful. But hard work and finding enjoyment can satisfy the soul. And so maybe I just need to get back up and do what I love to do that I was stopping. I think is an important thought.
Yeah, and chemically speaking, your body knows what to do. Like if you're meeting your body's needs, your body produces what it needs. And so that means, and they're like, and I probably should have looked this up. I didn't ever think that I would mention this again after psychology class in like 15 years ago, feels like in college. But like work out or be active in some way. And as you move, your body produces hormones. And I don't even remember which one it is, but like, a hug, your body produces hormones based on that hug and based on that feeling. And it's like serotonin and dopamine and everything else. And so the more variety you have in your life of things, there are times in my life where times in a day where I am very nerdy. I'm one of the benefits of sitting here at the house is that my computer is already set up for video calls because I actually have a bunch of dice in front of me from D&D. So there are times where I'm very nerdy, but then there are also times in my day where I am very, social and active. I go and I try to spend, at an hour in the gym at least 3 times a week. And I've got great friends there and I get to talk to people that, I've known for years and I've, some people are new acquaintances, and then also spending time, spiritually and trying to grow in that area and so the more varied your life is, the more opportunities your body has to produce those chemicals. And so if I sat here in this chair all day and, or if I went to the gym and stayed in the gym all day, like it's the same problem. I'm producing one hormone instead of everything that I need.
Good point. That's great. Balance. That's the key word there. Balance.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, isolation is dangerous, but then you need some rest, right? I mean, you don't want to overwork yourself. Overworking is dangerous, but you have to do something as well. Right after God's conversation with Elijah, the first word in verse 15 that God says is go. Just go. You need to go back to what you were doing. Go do what? Go back to your job. Maybe it's your depression that's caused you to lose interest in your job. Get involved in that. Think about the ways you can grow into that. Be invested in your work. Hard work pays off. Hard work is important. Go back to recreation, movies, golf, working out, Ethan. That's a way that can vacationing, family time. Go help others. Someone said, light somebody's torch and your own will burn brighter. I love that quote. And that's Acts 12, 20, 35. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier is the way that you find fulfillment in this life is not how can I please myself? It's how can I please God, number one, but also, number two, others. Acts 20, 35, Jesus, this is not recorded in the Gospels. I love when the gospel or when the epistles kind of give us new insight, of something that maybe was not stated, but it's more blessed to give than receive. You will find a better fulfillment of life. You will find yourself enjoying life better by serving others. That's why, going to the nursing home, going to, homeless shelter, talking to someone who's has a different life stage than you're in, or a different, an ailment that you don't have, will cause you to say, okay, I'm blessed. I know that there are some people that I see that I would not want to trade places with. And, I find, you might find yourself complaining. It's like, okay, all right. I don't have it as bad.
Right. And yeah, there's a quote, and I think the actual quote is, love is the only thing where the more you give it, the more you have.
Mm.
I think it's something like that.
Right.
But really, happiness is the same way, because there's was one of the things another fun fact. We grew up fostering, and I think we had some. I think the count is like it's 50 to 55 kids that have come through the house.
Wow.
And you really, and I went to public school, so I was exposed to different lifestyles there, but not in the way that fostering did. And so growing up, it is, we might be upset we didn't get something for Christmas, or we might be upset because we didn't go do this or do that. And then somebody comes, we get a call about a foster kid who shows up at the house wearing pajamas and nothing else. Like has no other clothes. And she showed up and she said, "Man, my house is so big." And it's like, it breaks your heart, because you see this and you hear this, and it's like, what a positive outlook on life that she walks into a stranger's house. She knows that she's going to be there for a little while, and immediately she can take that and accept it as her own, where we who've lived there our whole lives are mad about something. We don't appreciate it like we should. And so there's so knowing there are other people out there who would love to have your life.
That's right.
It's such a sobering thought.
That's right. How foolish was Israel? They were in constant fellowship with God, taken care of, and yet we want Egypt. And we find ourselves doing that so much. You haven't done enough for me, God. I need more, until we realize that someone else doesn't even have the things we're complaining about. Absolutely. So yeah, helping others. There's so much we can go do. So let's just go do it. Let's get back up and try to be the best we can for God. And then the last one here, because we're getting short on time, but verse 28 says, "In the way of righteousness is life," verse 28, Proverbs 12, "and in the pathway thereof there is no death." Simply living for God, and will and it just kind of, I guess, sums up what we've kind of been saying, but living the best we can for God through His Word, obeying His will allow us to be free from any heartache. Not totally, because there's still problems, right? 2 Timothy 3:12, all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. But we'll be able to overcome things that those who are in sin cannot.
Right. So, you think about Philippians 4.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And verse 11, "Not that I speak in respect of want, for I've learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content." So there's a physical aspect there, but also a mental aspect there, or emotional aspect there, where as long as, you go down to verse 13, "I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me." As long as I'm with Christ, that even if I am despairing of my life, even if I am anxious for tomorrow, even, you go through any number of mental conditions or mental states you might be in, I can be content.
That's right. Absolutely. And Paul, I can't think of another apostle that probably struggled with this that we're talking about than probably Paul, struggling with 2 Corinthians 11, right? All those things that he lists there. But there's still that hope, right? Verse number 4 of that same chapter: "Rejoice in the Lord always." And again, I say rejoice. So, looking to Jesus, looking to His Word. Matthew 11, 28 through 30. I want to close with reading this passage, Matthew 11, 28 through 30. If you're listening here today, and if you're not a Christian, and you're just overwhelmed with sin and just this darkness, as you don't have a light to your path, why not think about looking at the Bible, looking to Jesus, and seeing His path. Verse 28: "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." That heavy laden there is because of sin, and all the things that are associated with that. Verse 29: "Take my yoke upon you and learn it from me, for I'm gentle and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest to your souls." Christian life's not just peach cream, perfectness. There's no work, get to do whatever I want. There's a yoke there, but He says, "My yoke is easy," verse 30. "My burden is light." And so, why not just coming and looking to Jesus, looking to His Word, for comfort and guidance, and we'll be able to overcome the problems that we have. And so, Ethan, do you have anything else before we close?
If you also are sitting there and you're struggling with this and you're hearing all of this, and your next thought is, well, who do I talk to? Talk to us.
That's right.
Talk to, or like I said, at the very least, talk to God, pray about it. But if you have no other person that you can talk to, or if you want, there's some measure of anonymity, perhaps, or or just maybe you don't want to talk to the people that are right there in your life, that are involved in your life, but you want, maybe there's some outside source that you're looking for. Talk to us. You can reach out to either of us. I mean, you've got our names there.
That's right.
I think our cell phone numbers are listed on the website or on Facebook, if the website's up right now. But I mean, I'm more than comfortable. My cell phone number is 256-453-2406, and you can call or text. And I mean, if I can't help you with your problem, I can listen, or I can hopefully point you in the right direction.
Absolutely, yeah, and we're so many people here as well as a congregation, that are elders as well, are good men, and that want to help you as well. I know I'm speaking on their behalf. I think they would agree with what I'm saying.
I think they're fine with it.
And so, come see us. We encourage you to just come see us and reach out to us. Maybe it's not depression. Maybe it's just a question about the Bible. Just come see us, and we'd love to be able to show you a Bible answer for everything we do. And so next time we meet is what? This podcast will be produced on Friday. So Sunday, 9:30 for Bible class, 10:30 worship, 5 p.m. for worship as well. So, well, Ethan, thank you again for joining. Definitely
Absolutely.
have you on again. Appreciate all that you've said today. I know that it will help, and we've helped you in some way. So thank you for listening. Always remember to keep on keeping on.